So I'm really thrilled that we have a special guest this morning. Thank you to Fran for bringing her to us. Pnina Lahav is a professor of law emerita and a member of the Elie Wiesel Center for Judaic Studies at Boston University. Her fields of expertise are constitutional law, First Amendment law, and legal history. She is the recipient of the Israel Studies Award for Lifetime Achievement and the Prime Minister Golda Meir Award for Society and Leadership. She's the author of the acclaimed Justice in Jerusalem, Chief Justice Simon Agranat, and the Zionist Century. Of late, she has focused her attention on the status and history of women, and her biography of Golda Meir, Israel's fourth prime minister, presents Golda Meir's life in the context of the 20th century through the gender lens. And this book is, which is called Golda Meir and Her Path to Power, The Only Woman in the Room, is a part of the 2022-2023 book picks of the Jewish Women's Archives. So I'm really eager to hear what you have to share with us, Pnina. I grew up in Habunim, so my own connection to Golda has definitely developed and changed over the years as I've learned more about her. So come up to this podium here? Is that good for you? Right here, right? Yeah, come right there. Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and you can take your mask off if you like. I think that podium will be best. Yeah.
You can take it off.
Yeah, you can take it off, yeah. If you want to take it totally off, yeah.
Thank you.
You can take it off, take it all the way off. If you'd like to take it all the way off.
Take it off.
Yeah, take it off so we can see your whole face. There you go.
You're the boss. Thank you. So I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much. I want to thank friend Malino for introducing me to this congregation, to telling me about you. It's a great pleasure, and also my friend Phyllis Hoffman, who introduced me to Fran. So it's a very pleasing and rewarding connection. I also want to say that Golda would have been very happy to be here. First of all, Golda had a very good voice, and she liked to sing. And second of all, to see a woman rabbi in a congregation with men and women sitting next to each other was something very important to her, and that she supported. She once was asked, would she go to a synagogue in Israel? Because the synagogues in Israel, most of them, or at that time when she was asked, were totally segregated and very orthodox. And she said, yes, if men and women sit together, she would come, but otherwise she would stay home. So lots of lessons to learn about Golda and about Israeli culture. And that tells us that Golda, actually, we always ask, people ask, and a friend asked me also before today, was Golda a feminist? In action, certainly Golda was a feminist. The fact is that she worked very hard to go up the ladder. She was very ambitious. It didn't come all of a sudden or naturally, and she had to push, and she had to overcome lots of hurdles as she was going up the ladder, as she came to the position of prime minister. So if you're not a feminist, you can't do it. You have to believe in yourself. You have to insist on your rights. And swallow a lot of insults as you go forward to the position of prime minister. It's not easy. And she did it. So that means that she was a feminist. Therefore, in action, she certainly was a feminist. There was a contradiction in Golda, as there is a contradiction in everybody. And the contradiction in Golda is that she acted as a feminist. She came to power as a feminist, but she spoke against feminism. She distanced herself from feminism. And what she said was, well, I don't like these women who are very unkempt and have, frizzled hair and burned bras. So I would say to Golda, first of all, it's not true. So don't, climb on the high horse of untrue facts. Not all women are bra burners. There were a few women who burned bras for a reason, in order to protest a certain culture in the United States at the time. But most women did not burn bras. I was also a feminist at exactly the same time. Never occurred to me to burn my bra. And most of my friends did not even think about it or talk about it. So it was, she took something easy and singled it out in order to express a position, and that was Golda. Golda was a very good rhetorician. Okay, she was very good in rhetoric, and she wanted to drive her point home, and she did. So let's forgive her. That's my view. Now, so that's, Golda was a feminist. She couldn't reach where she reached without being a feminist. And now let me just talk a little bit about why I wrote this book and what was on my mind. I came to write this book when I basically was on the verge of retirement. I knew that I was about to retire. And I asked myself, what am I going to do now? What would be my last act as a professor of law? And what would I like to do in future? And my last act was, to me, was making a contribution in the area of women and women's history. That's what I wanted to do. So this book actually is a gift to myself. I didn't need tenure. I didn't need a position. I didn't need a promotion. I didn't need a raise. And I could do, therefore, exactly what I wanted. And this book is what I wanted to do. So a gift to myself. What I wanted to do is to tell Israeli women particularly, but other women too, the women sitting here, and also the men, about the conditions and circumstances of being a woman during the 20th century and reaching the position that she reached. What does it take, okay, to come to this position? That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to document it and analyze it. So, for example, just to give you one example, since you sit in a synagogue, what does it take to be a young girl, 2-3 years old, in an Orthodox family in Ukraine, Orthodox and God-fearing, going to synagogue every week? What does it take when you understand that you are not going to go to Cheder, and you are not going to open the book and know how to read it? Okay? Because you are not taught to do it. Because you are not supposed to learn how to read and write. What does it take? What does it mean to the girl when she goes through it? That's Golda. Golda at home knew and was told by her mother that we don't do these things, okay? The men do it. And because Golda was one of 3 sisters, and the father most of the time was not there, he was in the United States working, okay, or trying to bring the family to the United States. She could not read and write Hebrew. I also want to say, because she lived in Ukraine, in Kiev, she did not learn to read and write anyway. Okay, so it's not as if she spoke Russian or something. She was illiterate. And it was only when she came to the United States at the age of 8 to the state of Wisconsin that she discovered public education, and she could go to school, and she learned how to read and write. So this is Golda's trajectory and history. And we must remember it because she worked against the grain. She swam against the tide. She knew that she could not do these things as a woman, but she wanted to do them, and she insisted on doing them, and that's how eventually she came to the position that she did. And it's very important for us to understand, in my opinion, what did she go through as a woman over the years, okay, as she was growing up. Another example that I want to give you is when Golda was, that's also relevant to legal matters, and I will just elaborate on that with your permission momentarily. Golda was not allowed to was not allowed to think about a future as a working person. as a working person. Her mother wanted her to get married to a guy with good means, okay? Some kind of a lower bourgeois person who would have a store or something and support the family. And that was the epitome of the good life, okay? Get a guy to support you and everything is gonna be okay. That was her mother's position. So when Golda announced that when she was 15 or 14, that she wants to go to seminary and become a teacher, her mother said no. And you can't do that. You know, why do you need it for anyway? You know, do you want to be a rebbitzin? In those days, they didn't have rebbitzins. So she couldn't even dream that there might be a rebbitzin out there that she could look up to. So, and her father kept saying, men don't like smart girls. I don't know if you ever heard it, but it was a very popular saying at the time. And in my opinion, every time I see Golda going up the stage and talking, something is ringing in her head. Men don't like smart girls. And she has to work against it. And I wanted to describe this, and I wanted to bring it home, how difficult it must have been for her to decide that she wants to go into politics, that she's going to go up to the bima, if you wish, and speak her mind, okay, and advocate for some policies. It was not easy. It was not easy. So this is Golda's trajectory, and from this position of not learning, not being allowed to really read and write, that's the point, the taboo of reading and writing for women, from this taboo she went on to become Prime Minister of Israel. This is the big deal, okay? This is the big deal, and the hurdles that she had to to overcome in order to get that. So now, let me just talk a little bit about Golda's achievement as she went up the ladder and became Prime Minister. She was first, she was the first Israeli Minister of Labor. And, you know, I don't have slides here to show you, but when you see Golda is in the first Israeli cabinet, 1949, that got together for the first time, and there is a very nice photograph of that, and you see Golda sitting in the corner because she had difficulty with her feet. And you can ask me later, why is this? Israelis like to put Golda down. She had such heavy shoes and heavy legs. There is a reason for that, and the reason for that has to do with Zionism and her work for the state. So ask me about it. I'd like to talk about it later. So in any event, Golda insisted that Ben-Gurion appoints her as Minister of Labor. And now we come to the, I think, signature contribution of Golda's to the state of Israel. Golda was appointed as Minister of Labor, and as Minister of Labor, she worked very hard for 7 years on the codification of labor laws in Israel. We had some labor laws from the British, but they were not elaborate. And she worked very hard on these labor laws. And what does it mean to work hard? First of all, to articulate the laws, to bring the laws in keeping with the most advanced Western states in Europe. That's what she did, okay? And that was her ideal. And she also fought with the Minister of Treasury and other ministers of the cabinet who opposed these laws. Let me give you 2 examples. Golda's dream was to pass a social security law, I also want to say in the state of Wisconsin, social security law, when she was growing up, was the epitome of progress. So that was her dream, and she managed to pass the social security law. The important thing about the social security law is that it gave everyone, Jews and Arabs, men and women, the right to a basic salary, a basic support from the state, okay? You may be taking it for granted right now. I know in the United States you don't take anything that comes from the government as for granted, but it was not easy. Also in Israel, which today everybody takes it for granted, it was not easy to pass this law, and the Minister of Treasury was very much against it and called it irresponsible because the state did not have money to finance this arrangement. But she insisted on it, and it passed. Okay, and the Social Security law not only gives people a right to a basic income, but the Social Security law also supported pregnant women when they gave birth. So the Social Security law in 1949, something totally different and unknown in Israel, the state that was just born, the Social Security law gave women, paid women for coming to the hospital and delivering the child in the hospital, okay? It made it actually mandatory to go to hospital. You couldn't deliver at home, which in those days was quite dangerous, and you were paid for. That is, the hospital was paid, and the woman was also got a little, additional benefit to support herself as she was going through. This was Golda. The other thing that I want you to remember as Golda's achievement as Minister of Labor, which is my favorite example actually, is maternity leave. In the United States, you still do not have maternity leave. There is no law in the United States, certainly not federal law. If the state wants to do it, they do it, but it's not mandatory. So in the United States, you don't have maternity leave. Golda insisted on maternity leave from the beginning of the establishment of the State of Israel. And so I always enjoy asking young people, particularly who are not legally trained, what do you think of maternity leave? Do you think it's a good thing? Of course, it's a great thing. We wouldn't do it. We wouldn't accept a state that doesn't give maternity leave. Okay, all of this is very nice, but then I say, in the United States, they don't have maternity leave. People take it for granted as a part of natural law. It's not a part of natural law. It's not something like the sun that comes up every morning. No, you have to fight for it, and your legislature has to decide to give it. And that's what Golda did, and people got used to it. I think that's her greatest achievement, that Israelis got used to the idea that there is such a thing as maternity leave. I also want to give an example. There was, during the parliamentary discussion, there was a question of whether the woman who wants to get a maternity leave should be obliged and required by law to bring a certificate from her doctor that indeed she needs the maternity law before, the maternity right, before she gave birth. Because the law provided for a few days or weeks or months before you give birth, if you have a particular condition, that you would be allowed to get the maternity, to enjoy the maternity leave prior to giving birth. So in Parliament, a particular Parliament member whose granddaughter eventually became a very notable feminist, but this Parliament member was not a feminist. He was a member of the Liberal Party, but not a feminist, and he said, why doesn't she give a permission from a doctor or a letter from a doctor before she gets the maternity leave? And Golda said, members of parliament, she was standing right there on the bima, if you wish, and she said, members of parliament, you have to understand, the woman is not a nebachil. For those of you who don't know what a nebachil is, she's not a nebish, okay? I just love this statement, okay, and the Yiddish of it, okay? A woman is not a nebachil. She knows very well what's good for her, and let her make her own decision. So if you want a statement from Golda that she was a feminist, this is the quintessential statement. She's not a nebachil. She has her own mind. She knows what's good for her, and she will make use of this statute appropriately. Okay, you don't have to be paternalistic or maternalistic with her, and this is actually, the idea of the dignity of women. Give the woman her dignity. Don't ask her to go to the doctor to get permission to do things that are important for her own health. So this is, I think, in my mind, the labor laws that we have in Israel until now are the greatest achievement that Golda had, and they live with us. And in my opinion, they are not going to change. I mean, we have more capitalism in Israel right now. We have what we call piggish capitalism right now. That is also true. But still, when I enter a taxi cab and I ask the taxi driver, what do you think, okay, of the Social Security law? What do you think of maternity leave? They all say, it's a done deal. We are not going to give it up. We are not going to accept a change in these statutes, okay? So this is, in my mind, Golda's greatest achievement. I can talk later if you ask me questions about her, but I'm not going to do it now, her expertise in foreign affairs. Her expertise in foreign affairs brought about a great rapprochement between Israel and the United States. She not only encouraged the Jewish community, which it was not easy at the time, to support Israel, okay? She managed, this is one of her greatest achievements. I think it's a little bit, it went too far. I would like to see American Jews being more critical and more loyal to American values as they watch and see what Israel is doing. That's my view. You may disagree with me. But she did manage to get the United States Jewish community support Israel much more than it was before. And that was also very, very important during the Yom Kippur War. You know, that American Jews came to the rescue and rose in support of Israel. That was a big message to the American administration that was very helpful. So that takes me to the Yom Kippur War. Golda was 70-something years old when the Yom Kippur War started. This was October 1973. This was a terrible war for Israel. Israel was attacked from both sides, the north and the south, simultaneously on Yom Kippur, when the military was not ready, and the military intelligence did not give the appropriate warning that a war was on the horizon. We had 2,800 casualties in that war. We lost 2,800 soldiers in that war, men. We had 6,000 wounded in that war. And we had a very, very deep trauma, experienced a very big trauma as a result of that war. So what happened then, when people were totally shaken, they liked Golda before, but now they were looking for a scapegoat, and Golda became the scapegoat, okay? So everybody until today, when you hear people saying, I don't like Golda, why don't you like Golda? I don't like Golda because of the Yom Kippur War. It's not that simple, okay? It's not that simple. The argument, for example, about the Yom Kippur War, that Golda brought it about because of her stubbornness. She was so stubborn about not giving away territories, okay? The territories that were conquered in '67. She was so stubborn. She was so sure that the Arabs will have to give away their principles and insistence on a peace deal. She was so stubborn about it that she failed to compromise and soften the requirements so as to avoid the Yom Kippur War. And as a result, the war came and we suffered an enormous trauma. So what do you do about that? First of all, I want to say this is Golda's major failure, okay? This is Golda's major failure. She did not prepare the army for the war. She did not, as prime minister, she did not prepare the army for the intelligence, for looking very closely and finding out what the Arabs what is the Arab plan, what is Sadat planning, and if she listened, she could have heard him say, if you guys don't give in, there is going to be a war. He said it many times. But what the Israelis did, and what Golda joined in doing was hubris. It's not going to happen. Why? Because you're so strong, we have such a great military, and we are just going to knock down the Arabs in 1 or 2 days. That did not happen. And we paid a high price. So now the question is, that I always ask my friends, who should be blamed? Is it only Golda that should be blamed? Or is it the Israeli public opinion that should be blamed, who was negative about compromise, was negative about compromising about the territories? And Golda, what Golda did, and that's something for us to think about, and we can raise this issue. Golda did not show leadership here. Golda went with the flow. She went with public opinions, okay, which many leaders like to do. So should we blame only Golda, or should we blame ourselves for not seeing the fire, if you wish, on the horizon, okay, and insisted, changing our minds, okay, we are not as strong as we thought we are. We don't really need these territories. We have these territories where, 2 million Palestinians live in the West Bank. We don't need it. We can compromise and go forward and focus on our own state of Israel and how we want the state of Israel to look like. So this is a question that is open to suggestions. It's open to debate. But I personally don't think that Golda is the only person to be blamed. We can blame her style of leadership. Her style of leadership was democratic, listening to what the people want and saying, okay, if that's what you want to keep the territories, you don't want compromise, we're not going to have compromise. Okay? I'm going to see to it that we don't have a compromise, and that's what she did. But the question is, what is the question about the correct leadership? Okay? What does it mean to be a good leader? Does it mean to choose right from wrong and go forward even if the people don't like it? Or does it mean going with the flow or something in between? These are very important questions that we should always raise when we think about what Golda did. So great achievement in labor law, great achievement, which we still have today. Not such a great achievement in the area of war and peace. And I think these are the major issues of the day. I should also add, for those of you who are familiar with the story, there is also a tendency to blame Golda for being racist in the area of Middle Eastern Jews, particularly Moroccan Jews. That she was a racist, she didn't like them, and she kept them in their poverty and poor conditions. It's not exactly true that she kept them in their poor conditions, and it's certainly not true that she was a racist. She, for example, I always give this example because it's so pertinent and powerful. Golda's daughter, Sarah, married a Yemenite Jew. If you can picture it in your mind, you are all white here, so you can see it clearly. I think I'm the only brown person in this room, and even I don't look very brown. Golda's daughter married this guy, Zechariah. The name Zechariah by itself is an indication of Yemenite origin, okay? Golda's daughter married a Yemenite guy. Golda supported it. Golda adopted it. And Golda was very nice to him, okay? She never indicated any prejudice against him. She was very proud of him. She always took pictures with him, photos with him, etc., etc. He was pitch black, okay, in my opinion, okay, for an Israeli, in the Israeli eye, okay? He was very dark, and it did not bother her. Or if it bothered her, she turned it away. She did not act in accordance with it. And what you need to know is in Israel of the early 50s, that was a terrible thing, okay? Israelis were in the early 50s. Israelis, today, they are much less. I don't want to say that they are not, but they are much less, okay? But in the early 50s, Israelis were very, very prejudiced, and a good Israeli mother would not accept a son who is so dark, okay? Even though the guy was well-educated, he was a very nice guy, he was an artist, people would not accept it. And I can tell you myself, if you look at me, I don't look particularly dark, but it's well known that I come from the Middle Eastern community. And my parents-in-law, when they heard that I was going to when they heard that their son wants to marry me, were very upset. And for a while, they even threatened not to come to the wedding. Why? For the only reason that I was of the brown persuasion, if you wish. So and that was at the end of the 60s. Think what happened in the beginning of the 50s when Golda accepted this man, Zechariah, to her family. So in my opinion, if you are prejudiced and racist, you can't do it. You cannot do it, okay? And in my opinion also, knowing Golda and how strong she was, if she didn't want this marriage to go forward, she could have put a lot of hurdles on the way of this marriage. But she decided to respect her daughter and let her daughter lead when it came to choosing her own spouse. So I don't, and I want to say one more thing about these Black Panthers that I hope you remember. These guys, members of the, underprivileged, called themselves Black Panthers. And there was a moment in Israel when Golda was prime minister, when they rose up and they launched many demonstrations and some violence against the government, protesting their poor conditions, okay? And later on, the government tried to do a few things, and one can say this is one of Golda's failures. She was not aware, okay, of the conditions that certain people were going through at the time, okay? She should have paid more attention. To understand Golda, I want to remind you, this is the time of Munich, okay? Of a lot of terrorism, outside of Israel and in Israel, okay, from the Palestinians, okay, the rise of the PLO. And Golda was busy doing other things. It's not as if Golda was sitting, putting her legs up. She was working very hard, but she was focusing on other things. And she was primarily focusing on foreign affairs, which was her specialty, and looking at the United States. So it's not as if she was not busy, but you can tell her, as a leader, she should have paid attention to what was going on. I certainly think that it was the right thing to do. But what I want to say about this particular incident with the Black Panthers, it is said, and people always repeat it, and that's why I want to mention it, that Golda, when she heard about the Black Panthers, she said, they are not nice, and that she dismissed them as not nice people. So I just want to tell you, first of all, as a scholar, and second of all, as a person who studied Golda's history, did not exactly happen that way. Golda, there was a lot of violence, and Molotov cocktails, if you know what they are, okay, bombs, were thrown into the crowd at a certain point in time during the protests. That did happen. Now, a member of the Mapai party, who was a political leader, came to Golda and said to her, Golda, I met these guys, the Black Panthers, and actually they are very nice. And Golda responded, and that was what, recorded, they are not nice. They are not nice people. But when this was recorded, the context of the statement was not recorded, okay, or was omitted. She said they are not nice, but she said they are not nice if people who throw Molotov cocktails are not nice, okay? People who throw Molotov cocktails are not nice, and you see it in the record, it's all in the protocol. So in my opinion, if you're a good scholar and you see not nice, go and see what the context is, and also add the context to it so that we know in what context was this said. And the press and those people who are Golda detractors did not do a right job doing this. So they only reported that she was not nice, that she said they were not nice, but did not go forward to say she said it about those people who throw Molotov cocktails. And I personally would also say that they are not nice if they throw Molotov cocktails.
We have about 5 minutes. I don't know if you want to have questions or just want to wrap up.
Shall I sum it up?
Yeah.
Okay. So actually, I don't have much to say further, So achievements, labor law, labor codification primarily, failures, the Yom Kippur War, and actually, I think one of her achievements was in the area of foreign affairs, okay, bringing Israel closer to the United States, which paid big dividends during the Yom Kippur War, when Nixon was a friend of Israel and was willing to help Israel at its very, very dire moment. And the other thing is, I think most American Jewry, another achievement, liked Golda, okay? American Jews liked Golda. Israelis don't really like Golda, because not all of them. I'm trying to change it, and I'm managing to change it. I see that the Israeli public opinion is changing that way, in that way. Israelis did not like it. I just talked to Yitzhak Rabin's daughter, and she said to me, I told her I wrote Golda's biography, and she said, I don't like her. Okay, you don't like her. Pause and think, why don't you like her? And do you have the facts to support your dislike? Okay? And so that's, I think that's how I would like to end and to summarize. Golda had lots of faults. I'm not trying to present here in my book also, an ideal person. She was not. She had her problems, but no one can blame her for not speaking her mind and not being committed to social justice, to socialism, which in Israel is not a bad word, and for working to promote the public good for the Israeli people. So that's.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, I went too long.
No, you didn't go too long.
Too fast.
Can I ask a question,
Please.
Pnina? I guess it's a big question, but I think, when I look back, again, I sort of, I grew up in Habonim. She was a Habonimnik.
Yes.
She was sort of ideal. She embodied that socialist ideal. And then some of her comments about Palestinians are frankly horrifyingly terrible.
Yeah.
So I don't think to me, it's not less a matter of whether she was personally racist or not, but whether she sort of embodied some of the significant flaws of that founding generation, the Ashkenazi
Absolutely.
disdain for, or hostility towards, or something towards a very large segment of of Jewish population. And her just inability to see the Palestinians as human beings. I mean, to me, it's not about whether or not she was personally evil. It's that she was of that ilk, and she was of that time, and she was of that generation, I guess it's sad. I guess maybe some of us get disappointed in her because she was a woman, and she did have to overcome so much that she wasn't able to extend that expanded view to people who were not like her in other ways, whether they were Mizrahim or Palestinians. So is that a fair critique?
I think it's slightly unfair. I would like to just tweak it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
She was not a racist as far as the Sephardic Jews is concerned, Mizrahi Jews is concerned. She was not. The fact of the matter is, she had one at home, and her grandchildren looked very Yemenite.
I meant more in terms of policy. Not in terms of how she treated her family.
In terms of the policy, I would have to agree with you. She went with the flow. What she did is I don't want to speak too much because I know, I don't have much time, but she spoke against the Palestinians. One of the important things, for example, that she said, trying to persuade the world and her people that there is no such thing as a Palestinian people, was, I am a Palestinian myself. That's very nice to say you are a Palestinian. I'm also, from this perspective, I'm also a Palestinian because I was born in Palestine, and therefore I had a Palestinian passport, okay, like Golda did. So she said, I had a Palestinian passport, and therefore I am a Palestinian. Okay, that's flawed logic, first of all, and also it's ignoring the facts of the matter and the problem. That was Golda's major failure, if you wish, thinking about it. She failed to understand the Palestinian people. She failed to understand what they want and what they need. And she failed to see that there is a very serious conflict here between two peoples that needs to be resolved. It cannot be resolved one-sidedly. It's not a black and white question. It's not whether they are right or we are right. The problem is we are both right. It's their country, okay? It's you cannot deny it. That's how it started. It's their country, started in the 20th century, I mean, yes? It's their country, and they are entitled to understanding and for the government to go forward and try to resolve the problem. And where Golda failed is she did not rise to the occasion to tell the Palestinian people, you know, there is another people here. They are also entitled to a life and to their dignity. It's the dignity that is the issue here, which she always fought for herself. They are also, and for the Jews, they are also entitled to their dignity, and let us see how we can resolve that issue. That she failed to do. So she kept the Israeli mind in the bad, in my opinion, situation of black and white. Okay, we are right, they are wrong. That's not true. We are not exactly right, they are not exactly wrong, and what we need to do is go forward. And as a good leader, she could have done it if she wanted, but she didn't want to risk.
Didn't want to risk, right?
Yeah, and I want to remind everybody that when Yitzhak Rabin, did take the risk, he was assassinated.
Yeah.
So let's not forget that. This was very risky. She did not take the risk.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pnina. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we won't have time right now for questions and answers, but maybe you'll stick around for a little bit of Kiddush lunch and folks can come ask questions. And if you stick around.
And I apologize for taking too long.
No, you didn't take too long. It was perfect. Thank you so much.
It was a great service.
Thank you.
I'm proud of it, and she would have been proud.
Thank you so much. We have an extra copy of the book, so if folks want to grab it afterwards, you can take a seat. And thank you. Really, thank you so much. Wow, I'm going to have to learn some more.